The Armageddon box came out, I didn't buy it, and I haven't painted anything from it. I decided to just chill out for a while and see what I really fancy doing from it, if anything. And now it's been out for a while, and we've seen some models painted from it. I think my favorite model from the box is this tactical marine, and I really like it. I think it's posed super well. It's got an awesome Mark 7 helmet. The purity seal flowing is really, really great. I absolutely love it. I think it's one of the best Primaris, and I also quite like just painting one of the normal miniatures. I do fancy painting a captain, but I think I'll wait for a while. I just wanted to kind of paint one of these models. I saw a few awesome paint jobs from other painters, and I thought, yeah, I'm just going to paint that marine. But then I came to thinking, well, what chapter shall I paint it? And one thing I've never done before is create my own or do my own color scheme. I've always been a Blood Angel fanboy, Dark Angels, all of those. And I've just never got round to coming up with my own color scheme. I really like, the fluff and the background you get for the ones that are done for us. The desire just hasn't been there. But I thought, shall I paint this a Blood Angel? And I thought, that's a little bit boring. What can I do that's a little bit more interesting for content and for myself? I guess the opportunity with this is to create a paint scheme with your favorite colors, eliminating things you don't like, and also making sure you work with paints you enjoy using. One of my favorite chapters is Red Scorpions, and these guys are grey and yellow, and that's the reason I love them. I like painting grey. It seems boring, but I really, really like it, coupled with yellow as well. Another one of my favourite Space Marines is this one, which won a Slayer Sword way back in the mid-2000s, and I still love this Marine. I would have to think for a while on what are my best or favourite paint jobs of Space Marines of all time, but 100% this one is up there, and this is also grey with yellow. I just love this colour combination. It's a classic sci-fi one, and there are some important things that are in this scheme that I want to not copy directly, but just resonate with me, and I want them in my color scheme. I thought about the techniques that I like to do or don't do, and I think, planning your color scheme is important. Just thinking, what's it going to be like to paint an army? And one thing I don't enjoy doing is edge highlighting. I think it only looks great if they're razor sharp, and I just don't enjoy it. It takes a long time, and for an army, I just don't want to do that. However, I do really, really enjoy doing battle damage. I find that process amazing. And you can almost replace your edge highlights with battle damage, because instead of on the edge, highlighting it with a fine, brighter line, you just put chips and scratches where it's worn away, and the edges are normally more worn away than other areas. Battle damage also looks better, in my opinion, on lighter color schemes. I think when you do things like Imperial Fists in yellow with all that chipping and battle damage, it just looks epic. So I was starting to, really cement what my process was going to be. It was definitely going to be grey, but what I wanted to do was something more pale than the Red Scorpions. They're kind of a dark medium grey, but I thought I'm going to take that, but I'm going to do a much lighter grey. I also, going back to the Slayer Sword winner, I think the important distinction with the yellow is it's quite a faded yellow, and this is also really important. I don't want it to be a saturated colour. I like quite grim looking natural colours, and I wanted this marine to look faded and old. And yeah, those were the two things I knew I wanted. It was going to be a light grey, I wanted a faded yellow, and I wanted to be heavily weathered. With this in mind, I started looking at my greys. I have this Cold Flesh from Vallejo, but these Vallejo old model colours don't airbrush well, and if I'm going to be doing an army, I'm going to be airbrushing it. If I'm painting one model, I'm fine to brush it on, but if I'm doing an entire army of Space Marines, I would get a little bit bored unless I was airbrushing it. It's also an out of production paint, so I really wanted to use this color, but I knew it would be silly if I was going to do an entire army with it. So that's a big thing. I want a paint that's easy to use with the brush and the airbrush. I want it to be readily available, and all those little things I think are important if you're going to do an army. I thought about how I could replicate this color. It's basically a purpley kind of grey, and I thought I would use something like Storm Vermin Fur, which is a warm grey in the shadows, and if I just mix in something like D'Challa Lilac and not go all the way to lilac on its own, but I think I could get something I'm happy with. And I knew that even if I did it a little bit too bright, maybe a bit too purple, that I could calm it down with some filters and oil washing and the weathering. I learnt this so much when I was doing my World Eaters Dreadnought. I did that in white for the World Eaters, and it just seemed a little bit too bright and clean. And with just a few filters from oil paint, it made an enormous difference, and I absolutely loved painting this model. And this goes back to doing, those pale colors with battle damage, and, this gray I was aiming for obviously isn't quite white, but, this pale neutral color is just going to look epic with oil washes and damage. So I started by base coating the whole thing with Storm Vermin Fur, and I diluted it a decent amount so I could build up a really smooth base coat. This is the kind of grey I would probably use if I was doing Red Scorpions, and I started to second guess myself a tiny bit because I just sprayed this grey on and I already liked it, and I was thinking, oh, maybe I should just do it this grey. But I have done this before, basically, this colour scheme, and I thought, no, stick to your plan, trying to do a purpley grey, because, yeah, it's all about how it is finished, and the weathering changes things so much. But absolutely, I would love to do just a grey Space Marine with this awesome Storm Vermin Fur. I went to open my lilac, and the pot was sealed round the side. It looked clean, but it was rock solid and unusable. So if you want to copy this color scheme, then I would use this paint, but I haven't got any, and I really wanted to film and get this video out. So I ended up using a prototype for Minicolor. We are working on gray at the moment, actually, and I'm not using them in this video because they're not going to be out for a while, but when my lilac was dried up, I did use one of the prototypes we had. And what better way to check out this color and test it by doing this. But yeah, if you want to recreate the scheme, then use the Citadel ones. I added it to the Storm Vermin Fur, and I think I added a little bit too much, and I think I didn't quite dilute it enough because, yeah, it just came out a tiny bit speckly, but that's okay. I could just go back to the Storm Vermin Fur and spray that to kind of smooth it in. If I was going to do an army of this, I would make a mixing pot, and it's nicer when you have the pots ready done. You don't have to worry about mixing things, but I have done it in the past and it hasn't given me too much trouble. Just make sure it's something easy, like, one pot of the Storm Vermin and one pot of the Lilac. Then it's always easy to recreate if it's just a 50-50 mix or something like that. And you can always add more Lilac to that mix for highlights. I then looked to find a faded yellow, and I was looking at AK colors like buff, beige, but they were a little bit too pale. They were desaturated enough, but they weren't quite dark enough. They would be good for highlights. And I picked up this scale 75 Iroko, and this seemed more or less perfect. I thought I could base coat with this and then change it with some glazes or something like that. And here is one of the first problems. I thought this would be fine going over my pale grey. I sort of planned it, pale grey base coat will be really helpful and it won't be too bad. But this scale 75 paint was not my favourite to use. And if I airbrushed it, it could have been perfect, but it's a real pain to airbrush the shoulders and then mask them off. It's just something I might not want to do on an army. But yeah, maybe if I used liquid mask and I could leave the trim, it could work. So that's something else I would have to test. But yeah, definitely something to bear in mind if I do carry on doing more models like this. The Iroko brushing it on would just not be fun doing even just 10 marines would be horrible. I didn't glue the model together. Maybe I would if I was doing a big batch, but these are really good, these easy builds, and I thought it was fantastic to just pop the arms off. Love that. I couldn't decide between green or red lenses, but I really enjoy painting acid, bright, super bright greens. And as soon as I put this base coat on, I loved it. I would use something like Escorpina green from Vallejo here to game color. And I start with the lightest green when it comes to getting a nice bright popping eye lens. I also felt like just doing a bunch of base coats, so I base coated the eyes and I base coated the chest eagle in light bronze. I would normally base coat with just the dark bronze, but I thought I would try doing the light one first and then washing in the darker metallic. This was a no-brainer for me. I knew when I started this I was going to do the metallics with the Pro Acryl Bronze because it's one of my favorite paints. And I think this is one of the really cool things about doing your own color scheme is you can have those favorites that you love working with and you can just use those. There's no thinking. I knew I was going to use that bronze. I went ahead and just blocked in the black and the pouches in brown, all that stuff. I quite like working this way, just getting all your base coats in there. And now I'm kind of base coating the bronze, but I've diluted it with a little bit of water, so it's kind of like a wash. I'm not sure if this technique quite worked how I wanted. I thought it was going to save me some steps doing any highlights, but I still think my preference would be just base coat with the bronze. Worth a try though. I then go back to my eye lenses and I try to define them with a darker green. I'm using Mini Color Mallard here and it works really well over a light green. You can just really quickly get a smooth dark finish with these. So I'm just kind of separating the lens from the helmet with a small line and doing a little bit of shading at the top. I definitely prefer doing the lenses like this rather than traditionally starting with the darkest green and building up. I think this saves time and a lot of layers of paint. I did a quick verdigris effect on the chest eagle, and looking at the final thing, I think I was a little heavy-handed with this, and I think I did that because it turned out a bit brighter. If I just base coated with the bronze and did a lighter verdigris, I think it would have come out darker and I would have liked the end result a bit more. With the arms back on, and you can see I've blacked out the bolter and everything, I quickly did a base coat of Talon sand on the rock base. I sculpted this base on a Patreon video where I basically did 3 difficulties of base building. So this was the easy one, just some rocks for a marine, and I kind of did a medium and a hard, I guess. But I just did, 3 bases, and the video was about basically sculpting your own bases and rocks and just getting started in that world of sculpting and doing really nice bases. I called it Pimp My Tactical Rocks, as it was about kind of adding to the bases that you get with models. So if you're interested in that and all the other videos that I'm doing on Patreon, then please check us out. We really appreciate you supporting us on there. That is how we do these videos here on YouTube and the extra ones on Patreon. Well, that's my plug for the week. Gotta do it. And what I'm doing now is highlighting the yellow, and this was really good. It was hard to base coat, but doing the highlights was absolutely fine. I added some of that AK beige and I did a stippling motion so it had a little bit of rough texture, and this was fast and easy. So maybe masking is the way to go, and that would save a bunch of time on the base coats. It's always an equation, which is quicker, base coating by hand or doing some masking. With the shoulder pads done, I started thinking about the decals, and I originally planned on doing a 2-headed kind of serpent symbol with a skull, a little bit inspired by that Space Marine we looked at earlier, but I thought this is going to be really tricky because I'm going to have to paint it black, and if I get any black on that yellow, I'm never going to recover from it because that yellow was hard to paint over grey. So over black, going to be a nightmare. If I was doing my own chapter long term, I think I would design my own symbol, I'd probably have to get someone to Photoshop it for me because I can't do things like that. But I think I would spend the money. I would, yeah, get a symbol made and I would get the transfers printed. Transfers are so key when it comes to an army, and things like the Red Scorpions, you can't get a transfer sheet for them right now. And so, even though that's a chapter that exists, there's no transfers for those, so I might as well think about getting my own done. But for now, I decided to do something temporary, and I used some transfers from a Titan sheet, and it just had some kind of cool symbols, little eagerly things, and a skull. I actually found it quite hard to find some black transfers to look good on the yellow. Most of them were white, so yeah, transfers have to be a huge consideration when it comes to army painting. I would not want to freehand my symbols unless it was really, really simple, but it is possible to pay the money and get your own transfer sheets made. I think given the price of the kits these days, if you're really into this hobby and you're super invested, it would be worth it, depending on how much you care. But for me, I think instead of buying something like Armageddon, I'd spend all that money on just a transfer sheet or a few, and then I could do something really cool. But that's just me. While the transfers were drying, I decided to add some additional highlights, and I took that mix with the lilac and I just added some ivory in, and this is where it transformed for me. I wasn't too happy with it when I airbrushed it, but now we have all the details blocked in, and I started to add some highlights and it really came alive. I felt like I had done it too pale, but actually when I put this paler highlight on, it kind of changed my feelings on it, just changed the look overall. And I started to really enjoy how it was looking, especially on the helmet where I put more effort into doing those highlights. It didn't take me too long, and I would say it would be worth adding a lot of these brushed on highlights if I was doing an army of them. I finished with weathering and I did some silver chips over all the black, and that saves me from highlighting them, just scuffing the edges with metal as if it's worn away, and I really like how this turned out, and this didn't take me long at all. The longest step in the entire process was doing the battle damage, and I'm using Burnt Umber from Scale 75 Artist Series, and this is my favorite color for chipping right now. And yeah, this took a long time, but it added so much. As soon as I started scuffing those edges, breaking it up, adding information where the areas were looking plain, I started to really enjoy it. And it's this aesthetic that I always really enjoy on Space Marines. A bit plainer, not as fancy, and yeah, really heavily damaged as if they've been in war for a long time. So yeah, this is the longest step, but I think absolutely worth the investment, and I would say still faster than highlighting all of the edges. With the model finished, I wanted to filter it with some raw umber oil paint, and you can't really replace oil paints. You can't do a filter with it with anything else, and if you're worried about trying these, if you're on this channel, you'll see it every week with Henry. But yeah, this is a key step for me. I knew it would tone everything down and I could shade some of the recesses like round the shoulder pads as well. So a very, very important step for me, and I just think it shows it so much with this World Eaters side by side. It just changed everything and it gives the war-torn look that I want. And it is very easy to do. You just got to get used to it and just give it a try. I started by filtering the entire model, just really diluted. If it's too thick or too thin, I can easily clean it away with spirits. And once I'd kind of filtered the whole thing, I started to take some thicker paint and just do some little streaks and do some recess washes, everything I needed to do with the oil. Sometimes it's good to do a filter, let it dry, and then do the drips separately so you can play with different dilutions of the oil paint. But here I just wanted to kind of get it done. This is kind of a test scheme after all, and I knew I could do things like the oil step better, but it's more proof of concept, I guess, and I just needed to see it with a filter to see if I had the color correct. Doing little drips is super fun as well, just putting a dot of thick paint and then cleaning your brush and wiping it away to get some nice faded marks. I loved how this looked on the grey, which is after all the plan and the reason I did it. And that is my finished marine. I don't have a name for the chapter. I probably should have done that, but I haven't, finished the symbol or thought of anything yet, so this is just a test. Henry and I really want to do some shorter videos. We've been enjoying doing those super in-depth videos where there's conversion work. We talk a little bit about some lore and background or whatever. And yeah, it's just a bigger video. But we also want to mix in some smaller ones where we try some stuff out like this, maybe just focus on one technique, painting a sword or something like that, just to keep the content going on the channel. So I hope you enjoy this mix of some quicker ideas and the big long videos that we've been doing. They will continue. I'm quite happy with how this came out. I am aware that it basically looks like a space wolf, and I didn't really realize that until I started putting the oil washes on, and I thought, yeah, it's a space wolf with the grey and the yellow. It's just a slightly different look. It also reminded me of the Astartes video and that kind of grey scheme. I really thought that looked super cool. And yeah, maybe I could do something like leave these shoulder pads just grey. This would make it faster. I'm really bad at using Photoshop, but luckily Matt helped me out and did this mock-up, and I think I like it without the yellow pads more. If I prefer it and it's easier, that's a win. So let me know what you think. Is this plain grey too boring, or is it cool? Personally, I think if I went for it more on the highlights, made those stunning, I really, really like it. So yeah, it's quite good to Photoshop things, but I don't have the skill to do that. So luckily I've got friends to help me out. But I would love to do another test scheme and just paint it from scratch with everything I got from this video. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. I would call this an experimenting video, and I just took you along for the ride. So let me know if you enjoyed it, and we will do some more videos this way. And I encourage you to, try out your own color schemes and think about what you love, what colors you want to do, and then you get to do hopefully something that's enjoyable the whole way through. There weren't any parts I didn't like doing because I had chosen every color and every step based on my experience and knowing what I love to do. Okay, that's it for now. I will see you in the next video.